Happy Valentine's Day. This morning I'm talking about the flame of the heart. It's appropriate for Valentine's Day, the day of the heart. And this will be from the approach of Agni Yoga. Well, let me start with this. A legend of the Uyghur tells of a giant who captured the black dragon and bound him with many chains. The giant left his sister to keep watch on the dragon, and he hurried to the ends of the earth to announce his victory. But when the giant had reached those distant lands, he heard his sister calling and knew that the dragon was breaking free from the chains. The giant hurried back, but when he saw the seas before him, he realized that he would be late if he continued on the same route. So the giant decided to go from one mountain to the next, avoiding the seas and the forests and the swamps. That was the only way he could arrive in time. The black dragon was breaking free from his last chain when the giant arrived and bound him fast again. Let us remember this parable and speed along the summits. Moving from summit to summit will make it easier to encounter those who dwell in different lands and wear different clothes but live by their heart. That is how we shall reach the threshold of the fiery gates. And that's from the book Heart, verse 599. In the Ageless Wisdom teaching, there are many references which indicate the importance of the heart. In the book called Heart from Agni Yoga, it says, it is precisely the quality of the magnet that is inherent in the heart. The highest creativeness, which is hierarchy in Shambhala, is imbued with this great law. Hence, each consummation, each union, each great cosmic unification is achieved through the flame of the heart. And that's a quote from the book Hierarchy, paragraph 1. So we have three main channels of communication, we as human beings, three main channels of communication. And this is basically what I'm going to be talking about this morning. I'll be talking about the solar plexus, the mind, and the heart, and how they function within the human nature. Communication through one's solar plexus is called instinctive communication. Instinctive communication. It is an instinctive awareness. So it is interesting. It is a solar plexus or instinct that registers the urges of others. It directs people to food sources. It causes people to feel the physical and emotional states of family members and group members and so forth. Instinct and solar plexus. This is what the solar plexus does. The solar plexus acts as a mind in the average person. Instinct, mind, solar plexus. And with various negative emotions, controls their lives. It builds the mood of the person and his inclination and his choices. So that's the solar plexus. So when you find yourself functioning in this manner, or a family member or a friend, you're going to know that you need to shift that awareness from the solar plexus into the heart. Into the heart. Even above average people fall under the control of their solar plexus when waves of anger and fear and hatred and jealousy and revenge hit them. So that's one of the three stages of communication or methods that people use with their communication. The next is mental. Mental communication enables a person to use their life for self-interest. It is through the mind that the person can harness the energies and forces of nature and then use these energies and forces of nature to meet personal needs. Personal needs such as food and shelter and clothing. They can also use the energies and forces to manipulate and exploit others. So where on one hand, it serves us well, on the other hand, it works against others. All mental communication is based on self-satisfaction, self-interest at many levels, not just a personal level or individual level, but also group and national levels, if the mind is not led by the heart. If a person's mind follows the lead of the solar plexus, and is used to satisfy the cravings of the solar plexus, then that person's mind is going to create situations which ultimately and eventually trap others and are going to lead their actions into anti-survival. The mind becomes the trap, and this is the case for present humanity. So when we see what just happened at the Capitol, like animals crashing through this sacred space and wanting to kill sacrificial servers, and you say, but how could this be? This is part of the negative part. We would say negative as opposed to spiritual. The negative part of humanity. Their mind is following the lead of their solar plexus, which makes them anti-survival. Kill. They stole the election. See, and there's our answer. And this is why disciples must continue to do their work, to bring love into the world. Those who see the failure of their mind will resign from the methods that they are seeking and now try to find refuge in the heart. Heart communication is related to what? Motives, intentions, all-inclusiveness, unity, synthesis, understanding, compassion, and right human relations. That's heart communication. Also, heart communication is immediate. You don't hear a person say, look, I need some time to think about this. Heart is immediate, direct, and intuitive. Don't give me, I don't mean that. Sorry. when somebody tells you, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not ready to give an answer. Call me back in a few days. Or they get back in touch with you months later. It's mind and solar plexus in that person that's functioning, not the heart. Because the heart nature, the way the heart communicates is right now, directly, intuitively, and immediate. Now, what's interesting is our human soul is a synthesizer of these three centers. Again, the three centers being the heart, the mind, and the solar plexus. If your soul is able to synthesize, your human soul is able to synthesize these three centers of communication and bring them together as a device of communication, then your soul enters into the path of perfection. So the soul must first synthesize these three centers. And once this synthesis is in the process of occurring, that's when you put yourself on the path of perfection. And this is a phrase that you will find in Agni Yoga. For those that are wanting to practice the disciplines of Agni Yoga, are not physical. They're way beyond that. The path of perfection, the path of self-perfectment. The majority of people communicate through their solar plexus, regardless of their level of education or social position. See how this brings together for us who have these questions, who are on the path of self-perfectment, and see the animalistic nature that took place within these intelligent, sometimes not so intelligent, but let's give them credit for intelligence and higher education and social positions. And they're acting like monsters in a mob. A mob of monsters. Their soul is not yet in the process of synthesizing those three centers of communication. So we have our work to do, which is simply to exemplify the synthesis of the soul. The solar plexus controls their lives. It is possible to have a great amount of knowledge, but to be controlled by the solar plexus. It is sometimes possible to unite the solar plexus and mental channels. In such a case, the mind will use the animalistic urges and drives to satisfy its instincts, solar plexus. It also uses jealousy and hatred, or falls into vanity and separativeness and ego trips. It is also possible to fuse the solar plexus and the heart. It is possible to fuse the solar plexus and the heart, but this is going to create a lot of confusion for instinct and intuition. Do you understand? When the solar plexus and the heart are fused, it's going to create difficulty and confusion for instinct and intuition, between instinct and intuition. Eventually, we must fuse these three centers and make the heart the dominating factor of our life. It is the human soul that brings these three centers together and synthesizes them. It creates an integration and a wholeness in us. The science of these three centers and their development is so beautiful and scientific and helps us to better understand the nature of a human being. So in the undeveloped person, these three centers work one at a time, functioning separately from each other. But as the evolution of a person develops, two of these centers will begin to act together. And in some case, the three will function together. This is the moment when a person becomes conscious, when those three centers begin to function together. That's when the person becomes aware, becomes conscious, and is now in the process of expanding their consciousness. So the heart, it is the heart that is the fountain of all beauty, love, and compassion, and intuition, which makes life an experience of joy and freedom and creativity. If your solar plexus and mind do not interfere with the way your heart operates. So you see I'm trying to make this really simple. The Agni Yoga tells us, and I quote, "The chalice is the past. The heart is the future." This means that the Agni Yogi feels all pain and suffering, anxiety, and the stress of their family, their group, and humanity. In fact, this is why the spiritual teacher only accepts a few disciples. Like hierarchy, the teacher wants the disciple to have resolved their anger, their personal opinions, their biased opinions, even to have resolved their personal karma. So the disciple and the teacher can together do the assigned tasks of service for the hierarchy. So we read about these teachers and why they accept so few disciples. They will accept a lot of students, but few disciples, like Helena Rourke. And when we read the biography of Helena Rourke and all the hundreds of notebooks where she kept track of the communications with her teacher, we can see that this is a woman who had resolved her anger, her personal opinions, her bias, and even her personal karma, so she could work with hierarchy. As the Agni Yogi feels all pain and suffering and anxiety and stress for their family, group, and humanity, these experiences will allow the yogi to reach even higher levels of compassion. We talk about compassion. We say this solar system, was developed and created from the ray of compassion. We hear people say that they're compassionate. But compassion is an action. It's an action evoked from the heart. They don't sit and think whether they should love that person or not. They have compassion for life, for animals, for all life. They have compassion. It's not easy to have compassion. The phrase, "all accumulations of the chalice are from our past days and past lives." That means the accumulation of our treasury of our life is in the chalice, but our heart is the future. through the heart we look toward the future. In the book Hierarchy, verse 448, it says, hierarchy is the teaching of the heart. One should be accustomed to the understanding that the heart is the central motive power. And then in verse 233, it says, imagine your heart as if it were within a chalice, with an ascending flame. It's wonderful to read and study and imagine the chalice, not just your own chalice, but to understand that there are magnetic stations throughout space, throughout the spheres of life, that are made of chalices. Where we have an individual chalice, these stations of magnetic chalices are chalices made of great ones like Buddha, like Christ, like Zoroaster, and like those that we know, all form the petals of these magnificent chalices. So I like to see these chalices as stations that our consciousness, as it's traveling into greater and greater spheres of light, as places where we can stop and visit and recharge ourselves with these great magnets, and then go on to the future. Many thoughts are ways of thinking, memories, and plans of the mind interfere with our heart. Well, I want to do this, but I'm not so sure I can. That's the mind ruling the solar plexus, or the solar plexus instinct ruling the mind, self-interest. Negative emotions disturb the heart in such a way that the person cannot hear the message that their heart wants to give. The mind demands proof. And this is interesting, the solar plexus creates excitement. The mind wants proof, and the solar plexus needs excitement. The heart does not work with the forces of excitement. The heart is intuitive and sees the causes long before the results appear on the surface. This is why we're told in our meditation regimen to look for the cause, right? The heart works in deep peace. And if it is fused with the solar plexus and mind, then the heart will use them as carriers of its messages. If the heart is fused with the solar plexus and mind, then the heart will use the solar plexus and the mind as carriers of its message. The messages of the heart, the messages of love and clear thinking without illusion. See, without ego, glamour, and the spirit of separativeness. When the solar plexus and mind centers rob light from the heart, then it is these two centers that distort and encapsulate the heart, using it for the person's lower self, for their separative interests, and for the imposition of their will on others. Such behavior works against our heart and against our own survival, prosperity, health, and happiness. To liberate ourselves from situations like this, we need to make an effort to come in contact with our heart. And in its light, we will see exactly what we are through our intuition and compassion. Once Akbar, King Akbar, in the midst of the state council, ordered that the book of laws be brought to him. On the book appeared a small scorpion. The meeting was interrupted. Just a little scorpion. The meeting was interrupted, and all the counselors gazed at that small poisonous insect until the servants killed it. Akbar remarked, "The very smallest miscreant can suspend judgment pertaining to the state laws." Thus also on the path to the fiery world, the most insignificant detail can do harm. Only the heart can determine the fine point of balance between striving and caution. If the minds of all of a group of statesmen became dumb at the sight of an insignificant scorpion, then a cobra could throw an army into retreat. A warrior can be intimidated by a mouse if in his heart burns not the fire of faith and striving. To be in tune with the heart means to be extremely sincere with yourself and to see if there is any trace of self-deception. Once you can stand in the light of your heart, you will be able to see your behavior, your motives, and direction, and realize the damage you are doing very clearly to your future. By doing this, there is a possibility that you can save your future. The petals of the heart are like sensitive receivers of higher impressions. Listen to this carefully. Don't listen with your mind, listen with your heart. The petals of your heart are like sensitive receivers of higher impressions. Now, these petals can petrify and lose their sensitivity like a dying flower that loses its vitality and color and beauty. You know, I've seen this happen with people where they become disappointed in life because life to them was so material. Things that they could see and touch. I know so many people that this has happened to, and it is pitiful. You can't help but feel sorry for them. I was thinking of this man who had this beautiful, beautiful wife and 3 daughters. And when his wife died, he began to drink. And as he increased this wretched habit of drinking, he became so angry at life because of losing his wife to brain cancer. And in the end, he took his own life. He committed suicide. That's what happens when the petals petrify. We see old people. What makes them old is the fact that the petals of their heart have petrified. And now they're just grumpy old men and women. We don't want to be like them or around them. They even smell bad. And they may shower frequently, but they still smell bad. They're a dying flower. Once the heart becomes insensitive to higher impressions, it turns into a center of negative emotions. Fear, anger, hatred, jealousy, revenge, treason, slander, malice. Such a center then works against that person's survival. A decaying heart turns into a center of negative emotions, which then are generally used for destructive purposes. Some people think that negative emotions can be used constructively and in beneficial ways. It's like, this is so strange. Joe and I, my son, we were watching this ridiculous movie. And the only time this man, one of the key actors in the movie, could do anything was by drinking. So he would drink and drink and drink. And then he would go out and slaughter people. It was horrible. Well, there you go. So I had to learn, the causes of these things, and I could never figure it out. When he was not drinking, he was a kind, gentle man, and he couldn't do anything. He couldn't get off the couch. So if he was going to go out and slay the dragon, he would have to drink. But that's not the way. That's not the way we want to function. We don't want the center of negative emotion to stir us into activity. We can use positive emotion with more highly constructive results. So instead of hatred, we can use love, compassion, and sympathy, which makes a deeper impression. When you hate someone, you cannot see possibilities in that person. You only want to destroy the person. What would happen if they gained the power to destroy you? Some might ask, how does a person destroy the bad if you don't hate the bad? Can't you use common sense and reason rather than hatred? In hating the bad, you become like what you are hating. Does your hatred produce good people? Again, unfortunately, we have this incredible example that happened at the Capitol. Is their hatred producing good people? Or does it make people more aggressive and hateful? Negative, see, it's like, we can understand these things at a distance by examples of others, but we need to take it into ourselves and not rationalize our dislike for people, maybe our mom and dad, who harmed us in some way, because their harm will eventually be part of your personality. The way they treated you will become part of your personality, and you're just going to mirror their personality, the way they harmed you. So don't do it. Negative emotions dull your consciousness, your logic and reasoning, so eventually you turn into an animal rushing toward your victims without calculating the possible reaction and result of the clash. Positive emotions, however, such as love and enthusiasm and goodwill and peacefulness and fearlessness and compassion, create conditions in which your intuition and your mind and your logic and reasoning and heart work to their maximum capacity. They help you solve your problems and the problems of others constructively for mutual benefit. The heart must lead the throat. The heart must lead the throat. It must be the drive behind all relationships. And of course, right speech. As negative thought forms increase in your aura, then it is the throat center which acts as a refinery to save you from such poisoning, psychic poisoning. The solar plexus is a seat of your emotions and is also a healing center. But your emotions and the healing of emotion needs to be under the guidance of your heart. The heart also distributes and uses the treasury found in the chalice. See, this is why they say the chalice is of the past. It's the accumulations of all the good. So the heart distributes that treasury that's found in the chalice. This is why the heart is known as our future. It acts in terms of the future. It senses the future. It lives in the future. And here is a interesting little story from the book New Era Community. Once a woman stopped between the images of the Blessed Buddha and Maitreya, not knowing to whom to offer her reverence. And in the image of the Blessed Buddha, uttered these words: "According to my covenant, revere the future." This is what the Blessed Buddha said. "According to my covenant, revere the future." Standing in defense of the past, he said, direct your gaze toward the future. Standing in defense of the past, direct your gaze toward the dawn. Remember how we labor for the future and direct all your being into the future. In rays of knowledge, we bring a treasury, a teaching. In rays of knowledge, we bring a teaching strange to the world, for the light of the world is covered by darkness. Again, that's New Era Community, verse 95. So let me close with this. In the ageless wisdom, a strong emphasis is put on the heart. For example, we are told that the Lord abides in the heart. It is the heart that understands. All virtues come from the heart. The seat of courage is the heart. The spirit of the self dwells in the heart. The heart is the abode of love. All these indicate that heart has the central position in the constitution of a human being. The heart has a central position in the constitution of a human being. Today is the day of the heart. Have a good heart day.